We good? Okay, awesome. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much for your attention. I know it's a long day, and we don't want this to be passive learning, so we're talking a lot about interactivity, so there's going to be some components of that. In this one, it'll be a little bit more workshop-y and less presentation, so stay tuned. All right. Again, my name is Kelly. I'm from Box, and I just moved into a new role 3 days ago. I was like, oh, I'm going to a conference. So I just joined our talent and belonging team, so I'm now leading all manager training for the organization. But before that, I'll tell you a little bit about what I was doing. A bit of what we're going to cover, how I've approached various technical trainings. I am not a native techie, so I've really brought a different lens to all the programs I've worked on. We're going to do a little exercise around approaching learning design from a values perspective, and then kind of come full circle from there. Cool. That's me. That's me at the Moscone Center. Great conference space, just kidding. Not so much. I was there 3 weeks ago. During Kate's talk, I was like having flashbacks to conference season because I'm just recovering from mine. It was about 6,000 people, and I ran the certification program for our customers, and it was about 200 people. And in the year and a half I've been with Box, we've certified 600 of our IT admins. So a little bit about my background for context. I started in the nonprofit space, so I was studying women's leadership. I got my master's degree in that, and was working for a social change organization, running workshops and doing education conferences that were really centered around like women's empowerment and community building, and something very different than the tech space. And then accidentally ended up here. So I think I ended up here because I was attracted to that like iterative, fast, experimental, like just try out things and have fun with it. And I also saw it as an opportunity to bring this whole human, holistic approach to the tech space, and I really identified it as a need, and I was hearing from a lot of people like, yes, this is a need. So I transitioned to the startup that Katie mentioned, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Then in the last year and a half, joined Box's education change management team to design their customer certification, and I'll get into that. And then recently returned back to my leadership roots in my new role, doing manager training for Box. Awesome. So a little bit about Insight. So this is, raise your hand if you're familiar with this program, maybe some of you. Okay, not so much. It's a 7-week fellowship program that takes super smart people from academia and pipes them into data science roles, teaches them all the technical tools. But my job was to lead all of the professional development that goes on in that career transition. And these people have never worked in tech before, so kind of onboarding them to that environment is a whole thing. And even in the interview process, they assume, I'm going to go with whatever company like makes me an offer, and like not even going to negotiate. And you have to teach them like you have a choice and you're choosing that company just as much as that company is choosing you. So really baking in the sense of advocacy, self-advocacy, teaching in communication skills, how to get up in front of in front of an audience and talk to them, or talk in an interview and build connection. And one really fun exercise we did was around values alignment. So that's kind of the thread that we're going to follow through this talk today. It was a very stressful program. Here's a quote from one of the fellows. Kelly was the voice of sanity in the technical rat race. She reminded me that doubting myself was normal and okay. Those conversations left me with a sense of peace, gave me confidence, and encouraged me not to give up. So I really felt like my job was to remind people, like help them identify what are your strengths so that they knew what strengths they could leverage when things got really difficult. And I think this reminds me, like, when you surround yourself with people who know who you are and you're being asked questions about like not just what you can do technically, but who you are as a person, and then they know that and they can reflect that back to you when you forget and you feel like you're struggling with something, like that's an incredibly validating experience. And like that shouldn't be just dependent on ourselves to do, because we try to internalize that validating voice, but we need a community of support around us. And when we have that, we really become quite unstoppable. So a few assumptions I'm going off of for this talk. Culture is made up of values, behaviors that reinforce those values. I don't know who said this, but I think it's something we can all agree on and is a common thought around culture. And we're going to talk about cultural fit, and this values alignment exercise was really like, what do you care about? What does this company care about? And try to find the most overlap as possible, because if you do, you'll have a sustained sense of fulfillment at that job for longer, and it will motivate you. So that was kind of the assumption there. Another quote, integrity means living in alignment with your values. Also, no, this, I don't know who said this. It's just a joke. That was from my dad. So I speak to integrity, and it's actually something it's been a value of mine since I was little, because I was having a memory of yelling at my dad for like not eating vegetables at the dinner table, being like, because they taught me like, practice what you preach. And I was like, you're not practicing what you preach. Like, you're not like, you're making me eat the vegetables, but you're not eating your vegetables. So I guess it's been with me since the beginning. But since I did this values exercise with my fellows, I thought when I was looking for a new opportunity and before I found Box, like I needed to have the integrity to do that exercise myself. So I did a lot of values work and eventually landed at Box, fell in love with Box's values, and built out from that context. So here's what I launched. This is a certification program. I didn't know anything about certification. I didn't know anything about Box as a product. I'd used the product before, but I didn't know anything behind the scenes, what makes it successful. I just knew that I loved Box values. So when I interviewed, I said, what if I designed this whole program from the perspective of values and created a program where the differentiator was the culture of Box, because to me that's super valuable, and like just kind of takes it one step further than just thinking about product training. And we onboard our employees, but we don't always think about onboarding our customers. So I was really excited about this. So what I inherited was just sort of a pet project of one person. Nobody was really assigned to this, building out this certification program. It was around admin skills. So these, the audience is IT professionals who administer Box. It was product training, and it was an all-day lecture. It was a written essay exam, which people said they took like 40 hours to complete. It was like scary. Task-oriented, nobody owned it. And it was one guy's side project. So I was like, we have a lot of room for improvement here. And so from this cultural lens, I thought, cool, well, it's nice to teach people technical skills, but what if we can inspire them? How do we take this further? And thinking back to like why I fell in love with leadership to begin with, I realized like, if you know who you are, which is why I'm going to talk about values, if you know who you are, it becomes a lot easier to make decisions because it kind of guides you, and you become a lot more confident in the skills that you have. So it's just sort of like baking in this foundation below teaching to technical skills. So when I started, these were the three things I had in mind: professional development, community building, and product advocacy. So professional development, for obvious reasons, you get certified so that you can like have a fancy badge on your LinkedIn and like put it on your resume and like look competent at a thing and like say, okay, I'm qualified to do this thing. How many of you in the room have certifications? Yeah, fancy, right? It's also connecting, so we ran these programs live, so it was like building a professional network, and obviously I wanted to call out, like, this is how you get your next job. Like, I know your current company is paying you to be here, but you know, these people could help you find the next one. And the key to this, the way that we built out the content, was really thinking beyond the technical skills of what they needed to do, but thinking strategically about how Box was being leveraged for business outcomes, and to make them think a lot more strategically about what they were doing and why they were doing it, so that they could become thought partners in the business. Not just like button pushers, but like true thought partners and influencers with the stakeholders that they were engaging, to really get them at the table. And I thought that was an exciting professional development opportunity. So we had a lot of change management built into the content for that reason. Community building, obviously, these were very interactive sessions. So there's one-on-one connection, and the number one feedback out of the program was like, I loved these activities. It was super activity driven. I learned the most from my peers. We all know this. But the interesting thing is internally, I had to build a community for this program because I was one person trying to launch this. I was the only one on my team and was just trying to beg, steal, and borrow people's time. And I had to do a lot of cross-functional stakeholder engagement. Fun term that now I understand. And I did. I just got people really excited about what this means. And I think because I approached it from the perspective of values, it made sense to people. They were like, yeah, obviously this is going to empower our customers to use the product in a more sophisticated way. Like, why wouldn't we train them? It was a very obvious thing. And no longer a one-man show. I built a team of 30 people who were contributing to the content, facilitating the content, selling it. The biggest challenge, the fun part was the content. We are all content experts. The challenge was selling it, getting people there, working with marketing, working with product, working with brand, working with sales, consulting, customer success, just knowing who the right people were. And that's great. It was a really fun challenge. And then the third point, product advocacy. It's probably a little biased because people who come through a program at the beginning are already kind of advocates. So they're already kind of opted in and love the product, but they did end up loving the product even more. And they're like, okay, well now I really know what I can do with this and I feel empowered to go do it. And then the other thing that I was really paying attention to is, what is the purpose of this product? It's to facilitate collaboration. I don't know if any of you have used Box, but it's to work in real time. It's not just to store your files. It's not just to comment on live documents, but it actually automates workflows. And there's a lot of capabilities in Box that are a lot more interesting than most people know. So in addition to the product spreading, because they become advocates, I was really excited about how can I reflect the purpose of the product in the training itself, which means making it really collaborative, right? Anna this morning was talking about, if we're trying to create a sense of belonging, how do we do that internally? That's integrity, that's aligning the purpose of the product with how you're designing this experience on multiple levels. It just kind of creates a foundation. I'm getting nods. I think you're understanding me. Cool. So back to values. These are some of the values at Box that I love. Take risks, fail fast, get stuff done. The way, I'll give you an example of how this showed up at the training. I basically would get up on stage and be like, you have a whole day, or sometimes 2 days, because we did regional models at our various offices, ranging in size from 16 people all the way to 200 people. We really experimented with the model. But I would say, nobody knows you here unless you happen to come with your colleague. So if you typically are really quiet, try being the one who leads the conversation today. Just try something new. Stretch yourself. Obviously, we want them to have that growth mindset. And if you're somebody who does typically lead the conversation, maybe today is an opportunity for you to practice listening skills. And I usually got a laugh out of that because we know who those people are. Make mom proud. The stage for this is do what you need to do. Know what the expectations of you are. There's pre-work, there's a test. Do it. This is a gift to yourself. So give it to yourself, show up and be there if you're gonna be there, just like all of you are today, which it really is truly a gift. And the bring your blank self to work every day. We all have some version of this. Be your most authentic self. And I will say my team did this exceptionally. They're incredibly weird and goofy, and they would get on stage and make jokes, and the training was notoriously fun, and they were like, this is a certification? Those are normally torture. They're exams and boring and self-driven, and This was like collaborative, fun, cultural immersion. Also, you're going to learn a lot of really interesting things. So that's a little bit about my approach there. So here's what I'm getting at. Context before content. That is the takeaway from today. And we're going to have a chance to reflect on this a little bit more deeply. What was the result? You all know what MPS is. The result was amazing. Just in the just this year alone, we went from a 0, which is obviously not a 0 on this scale, NPS, to a 67. If you look at the medians, they're pretty close, but it's those passives that get you the 7s and 8s that don't count. So yeah, how did we do this? We iterated. I took their feedback, made changes session to session as we do. But I think that this score actually speaks to putting the intentionality behind designing the program in a way where they're going to get more than just technical competency out of it. They were going to feel inspired and connected. I actually had many people ask me for job referrals for Box out of the training. And one of the customers that went through it ended up becoming a CSM, a customer success manager, after going through one of the referrals. So surprising hiring pipeline. But I thought this score was really impressive. And this was here, the 0 was earlier in January here at in Redwood City, and the 67 was out of London. I wasn't totally sure if people there are just like less likely to give negative feedback, but I'll take the bias. Some quotes from participants through the program. I really like learning about non-technical frameworks because our roles often extend more than just technical savvy. This is information that rings more professional development to me. Unexpectedly, since I'm mostly a loner, my favorite part was the collaborative approach. I like that each was set up differently. That was really creative and helped keep the group morale up. So I would say, like, back to the insight, working with engineers and people who are going into data science, they were really surprised. Like, nobody's ever asked me what my strengths are before. Like, I've gotten away with just like being good at a thing. And they were surprised at how good it felt to be asked, well, what do you care about? Like, what have you thought about, like, your purpose? And it felt really good. And I think the same is true here. Like, you just assume you need to, like, keep people in their comfort zone, but they really liked the challenge to come outside of it. All right, activity time. Are you ready? Awesome. We are going to do a 2-part activity. The first, if you have a notebook, feel free to take notes. Reflect on one training that you're currently like working on or have launched or participated in if you're not creating programs, and pick one of your company's values, and we're going to try to map these. So in your own mind, spend a moment picking a training and one of your company values. And if you don't know your company values, choose a personal one. Does everybody have it in mind? Okay. So now we are going to pair off and discuss this question, just maybe a couple of minutes each. And we're trying to think beyond the content. Like, we normally start with our learning objectives or what, like, the specific thing we know we need to teach, but this is trying to take it one level deeper than that. So consider the design process, the delivery method, the environment you're wishing to create, what you want learners to know about themselves, not just the technology. And lastly, is the purpose of the product reflected? And this is another example from Airbnb that was awesome, was like that super host and super mentor. Like, that was a reflection of the product, and that adds integrity to the program. So discuss in pairs, and I'm curious to see what you come up with. You have five-ish minutes. All right, gonna wrap up our thoughts. I like how this has really sparked some conversation. This is exciting. We are wrapping our conversations. They're so awesome. All right. Well, we have a little bit to go. So I really, really want to hear what you came up with, but I don't have time. So tell me at the break, because I feel like there were some really awesome conversations that were just sparked, and you like just dove right into it. You were really wanting to get into it. So That's very exciting. And thank you for your participation. And I'm going to make you do it one more time, so stay tuned. But speaking of values, something that I've been passionate about from the very beginning is leadership. I studied it over a decade ago and have been showing up to that along the way. And I would say values work is a leadership practice. And there's a few other leadership practices that I care a lot about and have dedicated my time to at Box. While I've been building this certification, I've also launched 2 other workshops. So I wanted to share those with you really quick, just in case you're doing something similar and want to chat about it. So kind of a little bit of a pivot. So I'm one of our Pride ERG leaders. So we launched an allyship workshop that at some point will actually be mandatory for our whole organization. And this is really about advocacy and understanding your privilege, how to leverage your privilege to lift other people up. And this is a really exciting initiative. And so this is just here to remind you that advocacy is a leadership practice. Some feedback from this, we were talking about real nuanced issues in a meaningful way. There was no fluff. It gave great insight on how to use our situations to empower, empathize, and advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. So this is probably a shared value for a lot of us in the room, and something important to think about. Secondly, I've been studying and teaching mindfulness for also over a decade. And I launched Breathe at Box, which has served a couple hundred Boxers so far. And this is it's a leadership practice, and it's also just an incredible stress management tool. It's something we forget about all the time. Our breath can bring us back to ourselves. We check in with how we're feeling, can literally reset your nervous system. And the list goes on and on of all the benefits of mindfulness. And this is a really unique 2-day program where people come in and really get to connect with each other. And it's really unique. So if you want to chat about it, just a note here that mindfulness is a leadership practice. And on that, we are going to, here's some feedback. I was surprised by how brave and open people were at work. Nice to experience that when you let yourself be vulnerable, you connect more with other people. Absolutely loved how it wasn't so information heavy and instead focused on utilizing practices, stories, and interactive exercises. Really made things easy to understand and grasp. So when we talk about activity versus and the content ratio, this one is 80% practice-based. So it's very experiential, and it's let's try all the different ways that we can be present. It's very creative and light on the content. We let the content kind of fill itself in through people's experiences, which is super cool. So we are going to close, if you are open to it, with a very, very short meditation. And if you hate it, just don't do it. I don't care. But if you're willing, get your feet on the ground, get comfortable in your chair. If you're comfortable, close your eyes, set your hands flat on your legs. Just take a deep breath, so all the way in. Hold it at the top, and open mouth, let it go. I'll do 2 more of those. Inhale. Hold it at the top, and open mouth, exhale. This is such a gift. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. So we're going to spend just a few moments in this silent space. And I want you to pull up a personal value of your own. Whatever word comes to mind, don't overthink it. Pull up that word and see where it lives in your body. Maybe send some breath to that word, that value. What does it feel like to be in alignment with that value? We talk about values. What does it feel to be aligned with this value? So let's thank that value for being part of who we are and for showing up when we need it to guide us in the direction of our lives. Thank you, value. And super slowly, more slowly than you think is humanly possible, we are going to flutter our eyes open and come back to this space, into this room, into this Twitter building, San Francisco. And thank you for letting me guide you through that and for letting me share my experience over the past couple of years in tech. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Awesome. I definitely ran out of time for questions, but there may be room for one or two.
Come on down.
It does kind of feel like Price is Right. Yeah. So thanks so much for sharing. I find it really interesting, like the range of programs that you talked about, and that some of it was internal and external. You all happen to know that I work with primarily an internal audience, and you were talking a lot, obviously, about focusing on a values-driven perspective, which for some can feel really personal. I was curious if you have any people who attend the programs, or if they're mandatory, who are resistant to that approach, and how you end up handling that in real time. We did end up having things that were meditative or mindful or pieces like that in some of our programs, and we ultimately had to remove and kind of repeal them due to people's feelings in terms of personal comfort and pieces like that that came up for us quite regularly. So I was curious how you navigate that.
Yeah, feelings are hard and grossly undervalued. I don't know. I think, I'm pretty unapologetic about it. And it's not that mindfulness is necessarily a value of Box. It's just a way to be present and is more of like a tool to manage stress and to make you more effective. But I would say push, like when I did get negative feedback on this certification program, like that was externally facing, it was around like expectations of it being like, I assumed this would be a technical program. Why are you teaching me about how to influence people and get to know myself? So, and for me, that's more about clarifying expectations with like, this is what you're about to journey into. And if you don't want to opt into that process, then don't. But, you know, it's a tight line to draw. And I'm not so sure because I started my new role internally facing just 3 days ago. So stay tuned on that one. Yeah. Maybe I didn't
Cool.
answer.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I suppose the difference there is I come to it with a presumption of like mandatory compared to say opt-in. And so that brings a really good point about clarifying things where we had a constraint when it's mandatory of people feeling that they couldn't opt out or walk away, or that their expectations would be preset. So thanks for explaining.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you got to have choice involved. Otherwise, yeah, they won't appreciate it. But people love this stuff. You'd be surprised. It's really effective. Sure.
I just love this values approach, and honestly, I want to steal some ideas. Can you give us some more examples of how you drive that values approach in your training and certification? Like what type of engagement or activities do y'all do?
Oh, the day of, like during the training itself. Oh, yeah, we do case studies. So we do examples of other customer examples and their kind of successes and failures, so that they can start to feel comfortable sharing their own experiences and leverage the whole like leveraging the knowledge in the room rather than just like teaching to a particular topic. All of the activities were discussion based. They did a lot of whiteboarding and brainstorming, and they found that even if they thought they wouldn't have anything in common coming from different industries or different experience with the product, that they actually had a lot more in common. So it was just sort of creating a space where they could collaborate through all sorts of different ways. We had them use the product through the activities. So just thinking like, how can we continue to like integrate what we're doing as a company into this experience so that it becomes really solid. It's just kind of asking yourself that inquiry over and over again. And I also ask that in the process of like engaging with my own team. Like, so I think it's just like remembering the question. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.